Hey everyone, today I have a fun video that is sponsored by Arteza and we're going to jump on in. I'm starting off with a couple of things I've got from Arteza, and that is the vinyl and the transfer tape. This is actually more of a shiny glossy vinyl, but we're going to use it as a stencil. Well, I'll be honest, originally I was going to use it as a stencil, and then I decided I liked it the way it looked. I'm starting off with this glass vase that I got from the Dollar Tree, taking some rubbing alcohol and cutting it nice and clean so that everything sticks to it the way it's supposed to. I've got these really cute little decals that I printed off of my Cricut. I basically just searched winter and found some wintry things on the Cricut design space, and I've already weeded out all of the area, and then I applied my transfer tape down and it works like a charm, let me tell you. I did take the transfer tape and kind of stick it to my shirt a couple of times just to get rid of a little bit of the tackiness, and it held on to the vinyl really, really well. I have to say, is very, very nice quality, both on the vinyl and on the transfer tape. Now you'll see I've already stuck on some snowflakes on this vase just to kind of give it like an all-around design. And initially I was actually just going to use it more of like a reversed stencil. I took it outside and sprayed it with some matte spray paint, you see right here. And then once I was finished with it and brought it inside, I kind of decided I liked the way it was. Here you see it all finished up and styled. I think this is absolutely adorable for winter. Now I'm going to use just a block of wood that I've already sanded down, and I am going to use some of the Arteza fabric paint. Yeah, I know what you're thinking right now. Teresa, that is not fabric, that is wood. But it will work just perfectly on your wood, on your fabrics, things that are of a more porous nature. And I've spritzed it with some water, and then I'm going to take the color Space Black, and I am just going to start painting it on that little block of wood. And since I've already spritzed it down with some water, we're going to get a little bit more of a stain effect. I'll spritz on a little bit more and then I'll start to wipe it back. And this is going to really bring out the grain on that little block of wood. It's just going to give it this really cool effect without having to go through the hassle of actually staining your wood. Now I have another piece of the gloss vinyl that I've cut out on my Cricut. I just, again, pulled up some different designs on my Cricut that had to do with winter and just cut them out on the sheets. The sheets themselves come in a 12 by 12 sheet, which is kind of perfect because it fits on your mats just perfectly, because, you know, that's obviously most of the time that's the size of the mats you have, at least I do. And you'll notice here that it is weeding out just beautifully. Sometimes, you know, the vinyl is so thick that it gives it a really hard time cutting through, but this one just weeded out wonderfully. This has been a really nice product to kind of work with and make these different stencils. I was just checking to make sure that I got them all. There was just a couple more to pull out that I had missed. Okay, maybe more than a couple. So now we've got our cute little happy winter decal, and I'm going to take some more of the transfer tape. You definitely can get a couple of uses out of the transfer tape. This one in particular is the medium tack, and I like to fuzz it on my shirt a couple of times. Just once or twice is really enough just to get it to where it will release the vinyl a little bit easier. It kind of depends on what projects you're working with on whether you want to do that or not. So then I will go through and just burnish both sides. It's not an excessive amount of it that you need to do, like I've had some times with the vinyl and transfer tape that I've had to do. Then I will go ahead and find a good spot to put it and realize that I made the design a little bit too large for the piece of wood that I have. But not to worry, I am still going to make it work because I didn't feel like cutting it out again. And as you see here, it does come off relatively easily, and it's still got plenty of tack left where you could just slap that back on the backer and use it again for multiple projects. Now I'm going back in with another one of the fabric paints This one is in the color silver. And I'm just going to go through the entire design with the one color. And now that I think about it, it actually would have been really cool to give it kind of like almost an ombre effect, which you could totally do because you're using paint as opposed to doing it with just the vinyl. So that might be some kind of project to do in the future. Now this is more of a metallic, so it's going to give it a really cool effect, like almost like a little bit of a holographic look to it. It's really a fun project to do. I did end up doing 2 coats of it that I didn't show you here, but that's pretty normal to need to do with something like more of the metallic paints. Now, as you can see, I'm going to just start pulling everything back. I did try and pull it back when it was still a little bit wet to it. Not wet. It wasn't 100% dry, so if you are trying to peel it back at that point, make sure that you're cautious and you don't touch too much of the paint. I decided to do that just so I wouldn't have any issues with the paint drying too much and then peeling it back. I've done it before and had it flake everywhere. Not necessarily this paint. I don't know if it would. I'll have to try it out. I'll have to experiment with this paint and see if it does this. I think that because it's a fabric paint, it probably has a little bit more give to it because it's meant to be on fabric and meant to move and not crackle and everything like that. So I might have to try that sometimes and report back to you and see if it gives you any problems if you let it dry too much. So anyways, back to what we're doing. So I am just, like I said, just going to start taking all of that vinyl off. And I know it's hard to see the design right now. And it's, once you see kind of the whole effect of it, it's a really cool, almost like magical look to it. At least I think so. Like I said, I'll take everything off. And since it's fabric paint, I am not even going to seal it. It's going to be good to go. And here it is in this one is finished. Now I'm going to use it on fabric. I'm going to take some fabric paint and use it on actual fabric. I've got one of these little baby blankets from the Dollar Tree. I'll just, of course, get all of the little plastic bits and everything like that out. Now this is a very fuzzy fabric kind of thing. At first I was going to do just a standard pillow, and then I decided it would be kind of fun to do more of a long pillow. And since making this, my daughter has stolen it. She decided she thought it was too comfy and that she apparently needed it in her life. So what I will do is I'm going to take a couple of pieces of parchment paper and I'm going to put it on the inside part of this because we are going to put the fabric paint on here. It will sink through certain types of fabric, so you always want to make sure you have something in between the layers. Like if you're doing your own shirts, if you're doing pillowcases, whatever it is, make sure you have something in between the layers of fabric, or at the very least make sure you have something between the surface and the fabric. So I went ahead and did the same process as far as cutting out my stencil, weeding everything out, and now I'm going to apply some of the transfer tape. I had a little hard time getting it off, getting in between the, the backer and the transfer tape. I don't know if you guys have that problem sometimes. I find that if you just take your tool with the pointy end, usually that works out pretty easily. All right, so you're going to burnish it and apply it to the fabric pretty much like you would any other surface, any other thing that you're putting a stencil on. And so, like I said, you'll just burnish it down, do it a lot more on this kind of thing because this is a very fuzzy piece of fabric. Now, if you're doing this on something that's more like a canvas, either a bag or a canvas pillow, things that are typically more often made to craft on and paint on and things like that, it's going to be a lot easier for you than this. This is just such a fuzzy material. It just kind of wants to go with the transfer tape. Then once I've done that, I'm going to take a little bit of painter's tape and kind of give myself a little spot for potential error, just because it's possible. With me, it is entirely possible, and because this is fabric paint, it's not like it's going to wash off, so make sure you're careful when you're applying it. Pretty much the same way that I did with my wood surface is I am just going to take that same little sponge brush and dab straight up and down on to the fabric, same color as before, the space black that I actually used on the wood. Once it is done, and let it dry completely, and I'm trying to remember, I did go over it on little spots that I felt like needed it. Now, what I did just now is I actually clipped the top part of my fabric up onto my desk. That way it had something kind of holding on to it, so that as you're pulling off your vinyl, you have something to kind of keep it from coming up, not coming up, but having the actual material or fabric come with it. So you're going to just continue to work on getting the vinyl up. Try not to smudge too much of the paint, just in case a little bit of it might still be a little bit damp. And then here it is once it is all finished up. I did go through and do a couple of little touch-ups just with a brush. That kind of felt like that was at least the best solution in my mind. There were a couple spots that needed a little bit more fabric, or a little bit more fabric paint. Once we're finished with that, I did go ahead and turn it inside out, because now we are going to do the gluing. If you want to sew this, then that is a completely acceptable solution. I, however, do not sew. I have a ton of fabric, but I don't sew. So I'm just taking my glue gun. They do make a fabric glue. You can use that if you have it. If you don't, regular hot glue will work just fine. And I'm just going to go through and kind of make that seam. And once I've gotten, you can probably do more than what I did. I actually left open a whole side. You could probably leave half of that open and be just fine as well. It would have probably been a lot easier had I done it that way. So I'll take some polyfill, and I'm just going to then start stuffing the pillow. And once that is finished, I'm going to start putting together my seam on the end. I'm taking it and I'm actually going to glue down pretty much like my seam. Again, this would have been much easier if I had done about half that side. I'll put down my seam, fold down my fabric on top of it, and this is going to give me a little bit more of a finished look, kind of make it look a little bit more uniformed with the other side. This part doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to then glue these two pieces together. I think you know what I'm talking about. Hopefully you do. If not, you can always drop me a comment down below if you are curious what the heck I'm talking about. Once that's done though, now we're going to start gluing those two pieces together. Be careful once you get any excess glue. If any of it seeps out in between that, just be careful not to touch it because it will be very hot. Obviously, hot glue and all. Yeah, but we'll just glue all of that down. Once you've gotten the last little bits on there, you are finished, and here it is, looking just as cute as can be. So I hope you enjoyed my winter projects. It can get a little hard to get into like the winter mood here considering it's 86 degrees today. And I will make sure to list all of these products below for you to check out from Arteza, as well as Arteza's YouTube page if you want to go check it out for some more inspiration. And I will see you next time.